Welcome back for Chapter 11, Manipulative Math Center. Math and preschool programs involves children interacting with interesting collections of objects, from little sets of toy cars and trucks to a set of used up colored markers, or maybe just a bag of acorns or set of colored golf tees. It also involves children in playing with some pretty fascinating games like picture dominoes, puzzles, color bingo, and even tic-tac-toe. It will involve children manipulating stacks of blocks, shape cubes, snap blocks, the list goes on and on. It engages children in reading books, computer games, and playing with toy cash registers. These activities are all pre-algebraic experiences. They teach children the algebraic reasoning necessary for them to develop thinking skills. So basically, you could say that the foundation for all mathematical learning takes place right in the early childhood classroom. We know all about Piaget. We've talked about him throughout your entire time being in the program. He spent his life observing and interviewing children to determine how they acquired knowledge. Piaget describes three kinds of knowledge: physical knowledge, logical mathematical knowledge, and social conventional knowledge. Now, physical knowledge is that children build physical knowledge when they interact through using their five senses with concrete objects in their environment. Their logical mathematical knowledge builds internally when they interpret their physical knowledge and extract relationships about the objects they have acted upon. And social conventional knowledge happens when children learn when they come into contact with the names given to numbers by their society. So let me put that in terms that will make it easy to understand. So, for example, infants or a young child find out physically about rubber balls by chewing on them, squeezing them, smelling them, dropping them, rolling them, all of those types of things. So that's the physical knowledge. Then they process this information mentally and apply it to other round objects and other kinds of balls, making mental comparisons and noting similarities and differences. That is logical mathematical knowledge. Then the knowledge they have used or they've acquired is stored in their brains to be drawn upon when needed or refined, or when they might learn something new about an object or the fact, okay? And that would be social conventional knowledge. So children need to manipulate the physical objects in their environment in order to provide their brains with the sensory stimuli necessary to form logical thought. That is why the math skills promoted in your classroom will need to be manipulative, meaning the children need to explore them, just like we talked about with Piaget, through their five senses with concrete objects. So when you are setting up your manipulative or your math center, you're going to have at least one computer there, a table with 4 chairs, and a floor space for children to get down on the floor with puzzles or other types of manipulatives, shelving for all of your materials, and of course with those shelves they need to be labeled so that the children can begin to familiarize themselves with symbolization, and also be able to see what's available to them, and then return it to that exact location. You will want to change some of the materials from time to time, but please remember that you will need to keep them there, a particular material there long enough for them to become deeply involved in it and to understand it. And another good idea may be to have a bulletin board in that area where you can display their work. Now, manipulative and math materials are almost unlimited. They're just The list could just go on and on and on. So here are some items in front of you on the screen that you could have in your manipulative math center, from toy cars to, like we said, a bag of acorns earlier, maybe a toy cash register, egg cartons. Egg cartons can be particularly useful, like in sorting objects, because of the place, you know, like the 12 areas where you would put the eggs. You can drop a certain number of objects in each one of those little cups. So that's a great thing to have. Picture dominoes, a stopwatch, a yardstick, rulers, an hourglass. Just the list goes on and on. So the basic concepts that preschool children need to learn involve the following 4 areas. So they're going to need to know how to classify, order, pattern, and then the concept of number. So classification is the ability to group objects that have common characteristics. Okay? Ordering is the ability to order or arrange objects in a series by, like, smallest to biggest, loudest to small, quietest, those kinds of things, okay? Patterning is the ability to recognize and create a series of objects in a certain order and recognize that it's repeated. And then, of course, numbering is the ability to name numbers, count things in a fixed sequence, and then apply that ability to one object at a time, trying to get a total. So let's talk a little bit about classification. The ability to sort out one thing from another on the basis of its characteristics is one of the first skills that the human brain acquires. It involves visual perception. And why is that? Because children need to categorize visually among various shapes, sizes, and colors. Basically, they need to be able to compare one object with another. And they learn, and through doing this, they will learn that some things are alike and other things are different. Ordering, this is the second math skill, and it involves arranging objects in an order or a series according to a certain attribute, like height, their sound, their color, and then placing these objects in a series from first to last, or from tallest to shortest, loudest to softest, or from darkest to lightest. And this is ordering is a much more complex skill, math skill, than classifying is, okay? Young children need a great deal more knowledge and experience in order to order any successfully, okay? They need to be able to discriminate between objects on the basis of a special characteristic, like their height, the color, that kind of thing. So that is, they need to recognize how objects are the same or how objects are different. The next one we'll talk about is patterning. It's the third math skill. Young children, and basically all of us, are surrounded by patterns. They're every day, all in our environment. How we get up, how we get dressed, that's a repeated daily pattern. Songs, chants, jump rope rhymes, they're all in a pattern. Their daily classroom schedule, that's a pattern. Learning about patterns helps young children predict what will happen next in a story or even in the daily routine. So why do you think it's so important for children to know this? Why is patterning so important? Well, patterns serve as the cornerstone of algebraic thinking. And algebra in the early years establishes the necessary groundwork for children's future mathematics learning. Basically, patterns help set up brain wiring for high-level thinking and problem solving. And the last one we're going to talk about is numbering. This skill requires children to be able to recognize and say the numbers as in counting, and then to use numbers and know what they mean in everyday life. So counting for young children involves 3 things. It involves rote counting. Well, rote counting is saying the number names, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's rote counting. The second thing it involves is rational counting. That's applying the number names to objects to find out how many there are. okay? And then the third one is using the numbers in a one-to-one correspondence with an object. So like possibly having 5 objects laying out and touching the first object and saying 1, touching the second object and saying 2, and so on. So that's one-to-one correspondence. So let's talk just a second about activities that promote cognitive development. We have to make numbers interesting for children, and they really already are, because they associate their age, that's a number, and so they already know. They can tell you, I'm 3, and they can show you 3 fingers, or I'm 4, and I can show you 4 fingers. So when you put numbers like that and you do it around things that are important to them, it makes it much more interesting. Before children can experience actually counting objects, we've got to have them count. Okay, so before we can put objects out like we were just talking about and have them do one-to-one correspondence, we got to just have them, give them the ability to count, like by playing counting games, singing counting songs or chants, or finger plays, those types of things. So we will talk so much more about the Manipulative Math Center when you take CHT 217, Math and Science for Young Children. So this was kind of just an overview and really just about what the Math and Manipulative Center is for and why it's important in a self-directed classroom. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you next week.